They see the same clothing.
That's fine. Sorry.
Sorry.
Shalom from Jerusalem. We are so happy that you have tuned in. My name is Albert Veksler. I'm the director of Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, and we are here at the Friends of Zion Museum together with Nir Salomon. Now, we have been giving information and answers for our allies from the very beginning of this war, because we need you to be informed, equipped, and ready to stand with Israel. As we are entering Shabbat this evening, we need to, think of many things. Our soldiers out in the field, in the middle of the operation, maybe freezing sometime, maybe longing for home. We don't know what exactly goes on with their hearts, but we know one thing: when we pray for them, God will comfort them, strengthen them, and inspire them. Nir, really good to see you here today. You are a very special man. You are head of the Efrat organization that basically fights for the rights of the unborn children here in Israel. But now, as you said earlier, you have seen how these unborn for whom you fought have become the ones fighting for us.
Yeah, so we've at Efrat, we're able to already help over 85,000 women have the children they so much wanted to have. 85,000 children that are today walking around the streets of Israel. Some of them are now in the battlefield, on the front, protecting, going back in, coming and supporting those that are on the front. We need to now make sure that now that we've built their families, we need to protect their families. So I want to share with you about going into Shabbat a little.
Sure.
So Shabbat is Shabbat Lech Lecha, which I think is very, very powerful. If we think about the portions of the week that we read from the Torah, from the 5 books of Moses, the war started at Bereshit, right? The war started when we were just about to usher in the new year. It was the holiday. That first week, that Shabbat, we read Bereshit, and then we followed it up with Parashat Noach last week.
About Hamas, mentioning
Hamas, mentioning that the land will be full of Hamas, which there is referring to theft, to trying to take what is not theirs. Clearly, our land is not theirs, but they are not only interested in the land, they're interested in eradicating Jews from this area of the world. And then we enter into this week, please God, is going to be a quiet week for us, and we're going to be able to continue fighting in the battlefield to make sure that we win this war properly, the just war. But this week's portion is talking about Lech Lecha. God chooses Abraham and says to him, leave everything that you know. Leave your place of comfort. Leave the people that you are part of. The people you are part of were idol worshippers. Leave that behind. It's difficult for you. Leave your own family. It's difficult for you. Where should I go? Says Abraham. Go where I will tell you.
I will tell you.
I will. I'm not even telling you now.
So he didn't have a GPS or the map or anything?
He didn't have the GPS. He didn't have the map. But he had the belief in God that wherever he goes, that's the place he is supposed to be. And he starts his journey. He goes. God tells him, just imagine, this is remarkable. The first 2 words that God engages Abraham with is go. Doesn't say, hello, thank you for recognizing my kingdom. You're the first one to call me out that God rules the world. No, he just says, go. Which means, to me at least, it means when God calls us out, he immediately calls us out to action. You at the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast call people out to action. We're not born on this world to just sit comfortably in our chairs. We're born to action. God says to Abraham, Lech Lecha, go. And where does he march to? He marches to the land of Israel, but there's a famine in the land of Israel. And he takes a step back, he refocuses, and he says, no, I'm on the way to Israel and I won't stop. I'll recalibrate. He stopped in Egypt when there was the famine in Israel, and he kept his path going straight to Israel. He knew that that is the land that was promised to him. Eventually, he didn't know when he was told, just go. Eventually, the land that was promised to him and then to his offspring, all the way to you and me, who God is telling us, this is your land. So imagine, our kids are going out, we're telling them, lech lecha, leave the family, leave the comfort of your home, and go out to the battlefield to protect now what? To protect your home. The home is already controlled by the Jews. God has brought the Jews back home.
Huge.
And now he's telling his own home, the children of that home, now go out, protect the borders, go inwards in Judea and Samaria, protect the towns, because these are now your towns. I want to share with you something very powerful.
Let me just say something here in between. This is amazing. The way how you tell this story is really powerful. But isn't there also something that God tells to Abraham about the nations? Because he tells him, you will be blessed. I'll make your name great. But then he says, all the families of the earth shall be blessed through you. So he had also the rest of the world in his mind when he found Abraham and told him to go.
Everybody has a plan and a part in God's world. It's not only the Jews that need to work, it's the entire, God has created, we know, all mankind. The Jews have a destiny to be in this land and worship God in this land. And the non-Jewish world needs to be there to support that movement. It doesn't work alone. The entire world is a part of it. I say this to my friends all the time. I'm a realist, like I told you before, and I'm waiting so that my son can come home from the battlefield, can take off the body armor that he doesn't have because he doesn't. But to come with the strong spirit of, we won the war, and for me to take him, this is my dream. It's not a dream, it's reality. It's hope, not a dream. It's then to take him to Jerusalem. We live in Judea and Samaria, in a town called Neriya. I'm there on the emergency response team. I know you know.
Spokesman.
I'm the spokesman for the town. I want to take him from the town together with his sisters. I have one boy, 3 girls, to take him with his sisters and my lovely wife. March, not drive, because I hope you can't drive anymore to Jerusalem, because all of the nations of the world are going to come to worship on the Temple Mount in the newly built temple for God. That's my hopes.
Wow.
That I'll take my son. When I left him off, you're getting me all emotional now. When I left him off almost 3 weeks ago, when the war started and he was called back to the Golani Brigade, he ran, he put on his clothes, he took his backpack, he took his weapon, he ran, and a woman came to us later on and said to my wife, she says, you know, I'm so inspired. I said, why are you so inspired? She says, there were a bunch of women who were looking out and they saw you under this olive tree that we have. It was very, I guess, picturesque. I didn't know what was going on. I just ran to my son and I gave him the priestly blessing. And I said, you know, Yivarcha Hashem v'yishmerecha. God should protect you. And I want to make sure that you come home. But right now it's not about home. It's about fighting for the Jewish nation. And now I hope, as we are in the war, he comes back home to a unified Jerusalem. To a Jerusalem not unified east and west. No, that's already now. The embassy moved here. All embassies hopefully are moving here today, tomorrow, the next day to show solidarity. I'm talking about the unification of the Jerusalem in the heavens and the Jerusalem down here on earth, when the temple is rebuilt on the Temple Mount. So I'm a realist, and that's my hope, that my present for my son, my daughter bought us ice cream bars, and she left 1 ice cream bar in the freezer for my son when he comes home. She'll give him the ice cream bar, and then we'll walk together. Walk, because all the nations are already going to be here to see the glory of God back here in Jerusalem. I'll walk with him from our town, even if it takes a couple of days. We'll walk all the way to the Temple Mount. That's my hope. So we're very hopeful.
That's powerful. And like Ben Gurion said, in order to be a realist, like you said, you have
Israel, you have to.
You have to believe in miracles. And of course, it's a miracle, of course, the return of the Jewish people, and the very way how this nation has been gathered from so many countries and languages and places and speaking Hebrew here in this land. But we see now a bigger picture. we see also the enemies of Israel, enemies of God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, really orchestrating these things. Iran, in particular, financing and facilitating this attack, training these evil people. I cannot even imagine, that there are people in this world waking up in the morning and thinking how to kill and destroy somebody else. It's horrible, but yet these people are there, and they are doing this, and they are not stopping, and they are not waiting, and they make their plans. I know in Iran they have a clock that says that by this time Israel is no more, but we know the Bible says, and you can read it in your Bibles, Israel is forever. So whoever is behind that clock in Iran must be very disappointed, because as long as the sun shines and the moon and the stars are there, Israel will be a nation before God, and a nation before God we will be. And so we can see this bigger picture.
Right.
Iran bringing all of these forces, bringing all of these equipment, weapons, missiles in Lebanon. I mean, I heard 200,000 missiles from Iran in Hezbollah's hands pointed at Israel. So we really need to believe in miracles, to be realists, as you said.
I think it's a war against God. I think that for these Iranians, they're actually they know that the final redemption is here, and they don't want to accept it.
But of course, they have a totally different vision
for
the final redemption, because they think that they need to create chaos in this world.
Correct.
That's why they need the nuclear weapons.
Right.
Because then their redemption comes, their Mahdi will come when they have created this total destruction, and that's what they're after. So I think we need to really understand this bigger picture so that we can realize what's at the stakes.
Throughout history, the Jews have faced this evil enemy. And when it came a little bit distance in history, people said it can't be. It's impossible that people are as savages as the Nazis were. But the Nazis, there were Nazis before the Nazis, right? The Inquisition in Spain was just as cruel and brutal as the Nazis were. But as we distance ourselves in time and in space, so we don't see you and I have not seen the atrocities that happened down south. One of the people in my town is in charge of identifying the murdered bodies, part of the IDF. He comes home every day and he shares sometimes with me what he saw, and I ask him, please don't share. I don't want to know. And my wife says, listen, he needs a friend. He needs to speak this out. But as we're distanced, we just can't believe it. He's seen it in front of his eyes. We can't believe it. As you are out there further than us, outside of Israel, how can you believe what is spoken here? How can you possibly believe it? My father is a Holocaust survivor, and he was a little kid when he was saved, but he was in a cattle car for 3 weeks, and he saw people in front of his eyes die and remain in the cattle car. The stench in the cattle car that was from the dead people, from whatever they needed to do since they were there for weeks. He was there. We can think it. It's so unimaginable that it just doesn't settle. As much as we can, it doesn't settle. Here we face that evil once more in the face, like you said. They want to create chaos. They want to drive that redemption, which will come. Redemption will come. They want to drive it in the exact opposite direction. In the exact opposite direction. And that's where we come in. We need to tell the world, this isn't a fight between neighbors. It's not.
It's not about territory.
It's not about territory. It's not about the land of Israel. It's really right now about evil and good. It really, really is. Because if they can destroy Israel, they want to destroy the West. They don't hide it.
No, they don't.
They say it straight out. And if we don't show a strong arm, they will chase you anywhere you are. You think it's only us. It's not only us. They will chase you. So when you talk about Abraham, the entire nations of the world had a share. They also have a share on the flip side. Those that are against God, these crazy Iranian militaries all around the world, not only in Iran, but we see them pop up in all kinds of countries, including in European countries, including cells in the United States. All of these are targeting those that want to take part in the good that Abraham has started. It happens on both ends.
You know what, I was so amazed. We have our annual Jerusalem prayer breakfast in the end of May, usually here in Israel. And so Rabbi Yehuda Glick was in the Knesset, and he said, Albert, let me tell you, we will have a Jerusalem prayer breakfast in Tehran. And I was a little bit like, oops, that's going too far. But he said, no, 2,500 years ago, we had a breakfast, a prayer breakfast.
Yes.
There was 3 days of fasting and prayer, and then God flipped this evil plan of Haman and the folly of the king and all of the stupid laws he signed were just turned around. But it actually was a breakfast and a prayer breakfast. So why not, dream? We'll have a Jerusalem prayer breakfast in Tehran one day.
I will be honored to join. Honored to join. I can tell you, I'm sure you also visited. I have friends, long-term friends from Dubai, from the United Arab Emirates, and when you go there, you realize they know what part of history the Jews have here. They understand it. It's going to go one nation after another, after another, after another. But those who stand by our side, I say this to Jewish communities and non-Jews, we had this story of the corona. The corona taught us something very interesting. There were all these passports, right? You needed this kind of vaccine, you needed this kind of thing. They flipped the world all kinds of crazy, right? And they started showing we could close down the world in 1 second if we want, and we could reopen it in 1 second if we want. God has the ability to close down Israel, became mayhem. In 1 second, he can flip that around. And who's going to be celebrating when it gets flipped around? Those who fought for that flipping around. They shared in our tense times, in our difficult times. They will share in that amplified joy. But if you're not in these times, if you're not walking with Abraham through the desert saying, yes, I'm joining the Jewish people, or I'm not a Jew, but I'm joining the mission of the Jewish people, then you get to take part of the amplified joy when the redemption comes. So that's our way. We started the journey. And here is the amazing thing. You know what the last words to Abraham were in the Bible? Again, Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha were the last words that God communicated with Abraham. Which Lech Lecha was that? That was the Lech Lecha when he told him to bring Isaac before as a sacrifice to God. Isn't that amazing? God is saying you are all about action. If you follow my lead, you are about action. You don't have to sacrifice Isaac. Our sages teach us an amazing thing. Even though Isaac wasn't brought up in the altar, he wasn't burned up on the altar, his ashes remained at the altar that Abraham created. What does that mean? We don't need to sacrifice our kids in battle. We need them to have the resolve to go to battle for God. And if they have the true 100% resolve, Maimonides, the great teacher, tells us, if a soldier goes into battle with absolute resolve, absolute though, not 99.9%, absolute resolve that he's doing God's work, nothing wrong will happen to him. And if something happens in the world, then we know it's not wrong, because God doesn't do wrong. It's hard to deal with in these times after the savage attacks that happened. It's very difficult to say those words, but we have to strongly believe God listens to our prayers, and when we see things go in ways which we could not imagine, we have to steadfast stand behind God and say, we know you're doing something. It's difficult for us to stomach. It's difficult for us to deal with, but we're now praying for the continued redemption. That's not a choice. That's our obligation. We will stand here. We will send our kids to battle, but we will stand and pray that God will give the resolve first and foremost to our leaders to not stop until they need to stop, to go and fight a just and moral war. We don't shoot hospitals to kill people. We don't shoot terrorists to kill them. That's not the purpose. It's to stop terror. And if that means to shoot them, shoot to kill, we will do that, not because we want to kill him, but because we want to stop him from killing others. It's a completely, completely different war.
Now, today, as you will prepare for the Shabbat, and it will be a different Shabbat. Our boys are not with us at the Shabbat dinner table, and you will bless the girls, I'm sure, for that, and you will sing. But what would you leave to our friends out there watching us? They don't really maybe know, many of them, how to celebrate the Shabbat dinner or Shabbat as God has commanded. I remember, were you with us in these times when Yudaglik did Shabbat?
I wasn't there on Shabbat. That was right before. I left right
you
before.
You left before. Because he was kind, really kind to all our friends, that he treated us as if everybody was his family. So what would you say to our viewers today?
So I tell you, I think Shabbat is a time of peace, but it's not passive. We are told that Shabbat, God created Shabbat. How can you create stopping from work? We also have to learn how to stop. Stop is also action. We have to actively choose to stop. Stop and reflect. Have we done all week long what we needed to do? Have we done what we were charged with? And if the answer is yes, then sit, enjoy with our family, and let God fight the battle. And if not, it's a time for repentance. It's a time to return to God and create that resolve. Shabbat, we stopped, we thought, we looked back, we took accounting, and we realized we need to do more. Create that resolve. Our sages tell us that when we purchase something during the week, if it's very delicious meat, a fish, a wonderful vegetable, we should say, oh, this is for the Holy Shabbat. And then if we see a better piece of meat, we can eat that meat and take the better piece of meat and say, oh, this is for the Holy Shabbat. All week long, we're waiting for that moment of peace and serenity. God said, I created that moment of peace and serenity for you to be with your family and take stock of your family. Sit around the table with everybody. And if you don't have everybody around the table, we need to make sure that we're doing more. Until our boys come back, we need to think about on Shabbat, what is the resolve that we need to have so that next Shabbat, our sons will be around our table. I can tell you that when I spoke to my son this week, he said, Abba, don't be upset, but for us, it's not really Shabbat. I said, how can that be? He says, because they take us on buses. We don't drive, Orthodox Jews don't drive on Shabbat. They take us to buses, and they put us at this place, and then they train us, and we need to take out our weapons. And it doesn't feel like a Shabbat. And I say to him, that's okay, because you're fighting that we at home, you at home, can have that time for Shabbat. Sit, reflect, come together with whoever is around the table. Think about what you've done during the week. And if you've done what you could, and a lot of times, if we're operating, we have. Sit down and say, okay, I've done good. Next week, I got to continue. And if you haven't, go back to God and say, what can I do more? So next Shabbat, the Shabbat table is full with every single chair and every single plate. And I pray, my son, just the whole history, my son was demanded by the doctors to abort, demanded, in the middle of the 8th month. And my wife said, it doesn't make a difference what terrible disease they predicted he's going to have. This is a child that God has given me. I'm stand steadfast by the Lord, and we make sure that he's going to be born. We'll do our share. He was born completely healthy. Today, wow. He is standing on the battlefront after he spent a year and a half after high school. He didn't go straight to the battlefront. He spent his time in religious studies in a yeshiva where all he did all day long is study the Bible and pray all day long, and that's how he goes into the battlefront. So we want him to be home, and we want to make sure that in the next Jerusalem prayer breakfast, you can bring all of the soldiers that were on the battlefront that we were praying for. They can sit all together with us and pray together. Spend that Shabbat making sure that you do what you can. Calmly, sit with the family, gather in the flock that's there, and understand how precious every single one of them is. but also understand how precious Albert's son is, my son is, the hundreds of thousands of reservists that were called up, and every one of you that is out there in Washington pleading to help, out there in Estonia or out there in Moscow. I don't know if you're in Moscow, out there, wherever you might be. You might be quiet in Moscow, you might be quiet in Iran and praying, you might be strong and vocal in Washington. We want those people to be at the battlefront that they can fight and hopefully come home for a Shabbat together. We started with Lech Lecha, but we end with Lech Lecha at the end, to come together as family, bring Isaac back home. We want everybody to come back home. Even though we're going out, we'll go out to bring them back home.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This was fantastic, Nir, that you shared so many amazing things about the weekly Torah portion, Lech Lecha. This was something that God told Abraham, that he would leave his father's home, his relatives, and go to the place that God will show him. God will show you how to pray. God will show you how to stand with Israel. But thank you for doing this. We are thankful, and see you again tomorrow, 1 o'clock.